"We've got to get into the same cell," I said, in a proactive revolutionary voice of the 99%. "I know," said Tonks eventually. "I'll use my metamorphagus powers to grow big proletarian muscles and push down this fucking wall of capitalist oppression." I heard the sound of her growing and then a ripping sound. "Oh no," she said. "When I grew my muscles, my clothes got tattered and I'm naked now. I don't want to have to be concerned with a concept as bourgeois as modesty while we're in a life or death situation. You can be mature about my body, can't you?" "Don't worry, I never stare at girls," I said, truthfully. "I'm way too sophisticated and focused on class struggle to pay much attention to their enticing body parts." "That's good," said Tonks nakedly. "You know, it's amazing how different you are than most teenage boys. Most boys your age only care about boobs and sex, but you're entirely focused on securing communist freedom for the working class proletariat." "Yeah, I know," I said humbly in a working man's voice. "I try not to make a big deal about it because the cause of socialist revolution is much more fucking important. Still, you pushing the wall by yourself might not be enough. I hate to talk about something as bourgeois as my appearance, but I'm basically a hunk now. It turns out flying around on a broomstick playing Quidditch all day is really good for building your wizard muscles." "What are you suggesting?" asked Tonks progressively. "I'll push on one side of the wall and you push on the other side," I explained in an anti-imperialist way. "That way we'll rotate the wall around like with the secret passages in that fucking bourgeois computer game The Sims 3 World Adventures." We did that. I pushed on the wall with my big masculine muscles, while Tonks pushed the other way, and it turned around easily due to our proletarian strength. My heart swelled knowing the revolutionary will of the fucking people was being fulfilled rebelliously. I unlustfully looked upon Tonks as she stepped out behind the wall, and her muscles shrunk down to normal, restoring her incredible nude figure with no clothes on. "I'm glad to hear it sounds like you've embraced communism," she said as I paid no attention to her magnificent exposed breasts with their erect nipples. "I've come to realize it's the only thing which will set the proletariat free from fucking bourgeois capitalism." "So have I," I said awesomely, and I pulled off my sweatband, proletarianly revealing the fucking hammer and sickle on my forehead. "We've got to get the fuck out of here," said Tonks rebelliously. "But how?" I turned away from her and walked over to the window. Of course, I didn't find it difficult to pry my eyes off her gorgeous nude body because I wasn't distracted by it and wasn't really looking at it that much anyway. I looked out through the bourgeois bars in the window that were capitalistically exploiting us and down at the ground of the fucking island Azkaban was on. "Hey, I've got an idea," I said proletarianly. "Let's use our strengths to pull out all but one of these bars and then use the last one to rappel down from the fucking wall of the prison." "That's a great idea," said Tonks awesomely. "And we did that with the strengths of the people!" Once the iron bars of oppression were tossed onto the floor, Tonks turned to me with her teats jiggling, although I wasn't distracted by that because I wasn't influenced by rape culture. "What are we going to rappel with?" she asked me in a working class way. "The sweatband should be a good start," I said, and I snapped it and tied it to one end of the bar that was still in the window of capitalism. "Well, that's clearly not enough to get all the way down," said Tonks as I paid no attention to the bush between her legs as it flashed different colours. "I'll take off my trousers," I said, without bourgeois hesitation. I pulled them down, exposing my communist underwear with Marx and Engels on a fucking red background. We tied one leg to the other end of the sweatband, but it still didn't go down far enough. I took off my shoes and socks, and then we added the shoelaces and socks to the proletarian rope. Tonks nakedly climbed out the window and down the rope, but then came back up a moment later. "It's still not long enough," she said. "We need the underwear." I dropped my boxers, not hesitating to give up everything for the fucking revolution. I think Tonks was a little surprised and perhaps turned on by the size and girth of my enormous penis, but she didn't say anything as she took the communist red boxers. I looked down the window as Tonks climbed down the rope with her nude body being naked. She tied my boxers to the end and the rope became just long enough. She went the rest of the way down and jumped onto the island ground of capitalistic oppression. So, I started to rebelliously climb down the proletarian clothes rope out of the window of fucking Azkaban. Being naked didn't make me feel at all humiliated, as I was thinking of how the revolutionary will of the fucking people would help the proletariat and the bourgeois would die in a fire. I wasn't aroused either, although you might have thought I was based on my penis. However, I didn't have an erection at all and was just that big normally. I got to the bottom of the communist rope and went onto the ground in a revolutionary way. I was about to pull down the boxers so I would at least have underwear on. But then, some imperialist dementors came around the wall. Me and Tonks had no choice but to run away, naked, with no clothes on. Fortunately, running in an exposed state from bourgeois actors really made me feel the workers' struggle. I knew now that I completely understood the class struggle firsthand. How are we going to get off this fucking imperialist island? I asked Tonks in a socialist voice. I hear that Hildegard has a big fucking broomstick in her office, replied Tonks as her boobs bounced around with her running around, although I wasn't really looked at that. Let's go inside and fucking steal it for the people. So, we went into the front door of Azkaban and up to Hildegard's fucking bourgeois office. Tonks walked ahead of me, giving me a perfect view of her toned ass, which I wasn't distracted by. That elitist bourgeois lesbian Hildegard gawked at Tonks' amazing nude body. Oh my god, my panties are wet, screamed Hildegard in a voice of capitalistic decadence. You're not going back into your cell until I have sex with you. Hildegard started excitedly to pull off her clothes, exposing her fat, ugly body. Of course, not all fat people are ugly, and in some cases fat is beautiful, but this was one of those cases, and Hildegard really was ugly, but not because she was fat. As Hildegard looked down to begin removing her humongo granny panties, Tonks sexily kicked her in her ugly flabby chest. Hildegard fell onto the floor like an oppressive beached whale, and I ran into the room proletarianly. You can't defeat fucking capitalism, Potter! She yelled as I pulled the big fucking broomstick off the wall. The big fucking broomstick had seating for 5 people on it due to bourgeois excess. I climbed onto it, which was awkward with my shaft and balls being free, but I wasn't concerned with that like some kind of bourgeois elitist would be. Tonks got on behind me, wrapping her arms around my chest and non-sexually pressing her sexy tits into my back. Let's get the fuck out of here, I declared awesomely and kicked off the ground. Tonks tightened her grip on me and wrapped her legs around mine. The average teenage boy would have been incredibly turned on by this point, but Tonks could see that I was committed to the proletariat in my penis, which she could see was not aroused from over my shoulder. Not that I was impotent or anything. No! You'll never get away! Screamed Hildegard, chasing after us in nothing but her granny panties, while her ugly fat bounced around uglily in a flabby way. But she couldn't stop the fucking will of the working class people of the proletariat revolutionary moment. We flew out of the door of capitalistic Azkaban and out over the ocean. As Hildegard reached the end of the island, a proletarian shark came out of the water and started to eat her. You stinking rats will never seize the means of production, she yelled bourgeoisly as the shark ate her socialistically. No, you'll never get away. You can't defeat fucking capitalism, Potter. For a long time, we flew over the fucking ocean with no land in sight. Eventually, we got to Scotland, which ought to be independent, and landed proletarianly next to an abandoned wizard shack. By now, I had half forgotten I was naked and didn't find it arousing at all. Not that I had found it arousing earlier or anything. Harry, you must return to Hogwarts now, said Tonks wisely. I'll go off to fight the fucking corporate bourgeois on my own. I want to go with you, I insisted, because I wanted to be part of bringing down capitalism. And definitely not because I wanted to spend more time around Tonks in her incredibly nude form with breasts and nipples. No, Harry, you must fight capitalism at Hogwarts, Tonks told me. Your proletarian student comrades need you. I nodded tearfully, knowing she was right. As in correct, not as in right-wing, which she clearly wasn't. Then she gave me a big hug with her bulbous boobs pressed against my chest naked. When she started to playfully bite at my earlobe, I realized what she wanted, and let my dick become erect. We went down on the sand of the sandy beach which had sand. I got on top of her,
on the sand of the sandy beach and moved my 9-inch penis into her cooch. Our bodies locked together on the beach, naked, because our clothes were gone in Azkaban, where we had sacrificed them for the people.
For the people!
I pumped my semen into her, just like how I would pump class consciousness into the fucking proletariat. Then a big wave rushed over us romantically, just as I had an incredible orgasm. Which wasn't a big deal for me, because I had fucking awesome sex all the time. I just didn't talk about it much because the fucking class struggle was so much more fucking important. It was beautiful how we made love on the sand, while having nothing except each other's bodies, and also the big fucking broomstick off to the side. We got up off the ground of the beach, which had sand on it. Tonks walked away from me, turned back, smiled, and then mounted the big fucking broomstick. I waved comradely as she flew away in a socialist way. Once she disappeared into the distance, I went into the wizard house and saw there was a fireplace in it. I took some flu powder from nearby, threw it into the fire, and went into the fire that the flu powder was in. I knew I had to reappear at Hogwarts somewhere, where someone who I could trust was there, so I said, "Hagrid's cabin," in a working class voice. I came out of the fucking fireplace in Hagrid's fucking house with fucking Hagrid in it. I got up communistically off the floor and brushed the soot off my toned naked body with muscles on it and no clothes at all.
Blimey, Harry, where are your fucking clothes?
Asked Hagrid to me. They're in fucking Azkaban, I explained, gloriously. I had to sacrifice them to escape Azkaban for the fucking people.
Well, I'm sorry about that,
said Hagrid.
But that's what happens when you get involved with the revolutionary movement. If you associate with criminals, don't be surprised when you end up in prison.
You think we're the fucking criminals? I yelled outrageously in a voice of the proletariat. What do you think of the fucking capitalist, bourgeoisie, imperialist corporations of fucking capitalism?
Demitist forms of government are the problem,
said Hagrid in a reactionary voice.
Demitism is when any power is given to the common people who don't deserve it. Once you give power to the mob, they can just vote all the money out of the treasury. That's why democracy leads to communism. Absolute monarchy is the only way.
What? I said, in a voice of the poor people who are poor because of capitalism. You're a fucking monarchist?
Yes,
said Hagrid in a monarchist way. Then he opened up his fucking vest to reveal a purple shirt with a crown on it and with the words "Keep calm and support the monarchy." How the fucking fuck can you support the monarchy? I progressively shrieked in a socialist voice.
Your communist movement is really scary and radical to normal people like me,
explained Hagrid with his false consciousness.
It's making people think differently, and these new ideas are too strange and shocking. I started to wonder how this could all happen, but then I realized it was just the natural result of democracy. All forms of demitism lead to tyranny, like what happened in the horrible far-left French Revolution. That's when all this fucking trouble started.
The fucking French Revolution wasn't even a revolution of the fucking proletariat. It was a revolution of the fucking bourgeoisie. Fuck you fucking far-right reactionary.
I turned to march out of Hagrid's fucking house and up to the Great Hall.
"Hey, wait!"
yelled Hagrid to me after I was halfway across his monarchist pumpkin patch.
"You can't go to the school with those fucking clothes on."
"Just watch me," I said,
turning around boldly to face Hagrid, with my wang swinging around in the open air like what poor colonized people in South Korea who couldn't afford clothes experienced daily. If bourgeois modesty held me back, I'd still be in fucking Azkaban right now.
"There are fucking first years up there,"
Hagrid replied responsively. Well, all right. I suppose I should pick my battles, and challenging bourgeois modesty is nowhere near as important as destroying fucking capitalism, I said, proletarianly. So I picked up one of Hagrid's pumpkins and held it so the pumpkin part was over my enormous penis, and the stem went between my legs and curved around to cover my socialist butt crack. Then I began walking up to Hogwarts, carrying the pumpkin with me over my fucking privates.